Hello, I am the cartoonist M. Rashid. This cartoon that I want to talk about, titled "No Good Deed," uh, it actually references as an archetype the time period when the civilized black peoples went to Europe and brought the sciences and literature and culture to the primitive Euro ethnic tribes. Normally, I shorthand this as referring to the Blackamoors when they did it, you know. But this was something that happened a lot. It happened like the way back in ancient Rome. It happened a while. The historical record shows that uh, Europe was for actually considered part of a West African kingdom at some point, way back in the distant past. This is not information that's normally talked about in the modern day, just because the narratives that are pressed are part of the package of enabling the dominant political identity to maintain their dominance. They don't want you to. Is what we don't have is a fair and open and let's just discuss the facts of history type of society. We don't have that at all. What we have are particular ideological narratives designed to enable a handful of, maybe not a handful, maybe like a couple dozen legacy families maintain their dominant position. And then tiers of groups underneath that are their support class. You know, the main name of the game inside of that system is no competition. They want to enjoy what they have and don't worry about competing with resources with other people who a situation that could leads to the risk of the balance of power tipping and now somebody else is in charge. They want to maintain their power position as long as possible. And a huge part of that is I think it's called the seasoning period. In the beginning, you have the breaking, which is when you smash your people with the fist of war. And then once that's done, you have to like manipulate their mind, indoctrinate them into being subjugated to you. So you don't have to like use the force of war. You can like keep them where they are mentally so that they, don't go anywhere. You can reasonably turn your back on them and trust that when you turn back around, they're still going to be there, like asking what next. That kind of, call to mind that the original propaganda by white people about Black Americans and during slavery was that we were the perfect slave. We were great as slaves. You could like let them watch your kids and manage your estate and all that. So they were great for that. You know, after slavery, taking advantage of the 13th Amendment loophole and slavery has gone except for the convicted, prisoner. Now the propaganda about my people is that we're inherently criminals and we make the best criminals ever and the best prison convict leasing. That's what we're dealing with in the modern day. There is no um, active public searches for truth, and let's just have open dialogue about what's real so that we can move the populace forward in the best possible way. You know, any kind of talk like that is just lip service and fake. The real talk is we're the dominant group, and we're gonna maintain our dominance no matter what, and you stay where you are. So the historical record, the formal historical record that's available for the public, that you don't have to like dig deep into. It's like right there. The formal historical record is that one that supports the ideology of the people who want to maintain power. It's just a brainwashing, indoctrination nonsense. If you come across truth in it, it's almost always by accident. They forgot. So, the idea that Europe used to be part of a great black empire in the past, there's no surprise that this is not normal stuff. You gotta, holy crap, you gotta dig for it. You gotta dig for what's real to like get a bigger, flesh out picture of what we actually went through as a species. You know, our people are old. You know, we're old as a species, but there have been so many times where were busted back down to the Stone Age. So many times where these huge libraries of like ambitious civilizations who are like, let's compile all the world's knowledge in like one place, and they did that several times throughout the ages with poor safety fire processes and procedures, and giant legendary fires that burned up these libraries. And now we're going to start all over again in a lot of ways for a variety of reasons. So, and what that does is it gives opportunity for a grifter class, an over-ambitious grifter class, to find opportunity to make up a false narrative about the past that happens to coincide with their era of dominance. So, in the end, it's ugly. So, my cartoon is basically, it's an archetype representing a time period when the generous, or maybe shady, but for now we'll go with generous, decision of ancient black civilizers who went up to the light-skinned Euro ethnic tribes and brought them culture and science and the civilization and stuff, so that these people would later build upon that as their inherited lore and form the society that we have today, the civilization that the Euro imperialists. Now, my ideological foes have been sharing this cartoon a lot, and they've put their spin on it. They don't like it, and they, because according to the official mainstream narrative, black people have never done anything. That the entire human race have just been dormant, scratching their butts and picking their noses, playing with like rudimentary fire, maybe hanging out in the trees, waiting for white people to show up and do everything. That's their nonsensical, pagan, semi-divine white religion, white supremacist ideology religion. Naturally, I dismiss it out of hand as a foolishness, demonic foolishness. And I'm going to put in the description these quotes, several quotes from white scholars during the rise of the European imperialism. They're like, as they were like building up, like people who were born in the mid 1800s and stuff like that. Those scholars from that time period who had not yet developed the memo, let's say, that we have to hide the fact that we've inherited our lore from the previous black civilizations of the past. Quotes from white scholars who are still in awe of the previous groups, and their candid speak about their own people as a race. Where they talk about, the white Europeans are late to the game of civilization, is what they were saying. While everybody else was doing all this great stuff, casually talking about the black civilizations of the past and their lore and the great things they made and their inspiration on the later white people to come as they built up. You can see in ritual systems of like the Grand Orient Masonry and people like that, Shriners. And in their high level rituals, you can see the influence, the multi-generational cultural influence of the awe that their ancestors had, maybe spiritual ancestors had, for the black civilizations of the past and the splendor of those kingdoms. So how the wealthy of the modern civilization does things is their version of what they culturally remembered people before did. I mentioned this in an argument I was having on Quora that I captured and put on my blog, and this cartoon was actually originally created as the cover for that argument. And of course, I linked to it in the description if you're interested. But so the cartoon represents an archetype of multiple time periods of black people going to Europe and civilizing them. I have the white characters there speaking in a vernacular, like a unsophisticated vernacular, taking a piece from Dr. Sewell's title essay of black rednecks and white liberals. Not 100% accurately linked here, but if you know what you know, you get why I'm using that specifically for them in that way, in that context. But one of the things that my critics talk about is the garb that I have the black civilizations wearing. And I'm like, all right, they disagree with it. They think it's like, how come they're not wearing African garb or whatever like that, but the reference that I use for it comes from those like old paintings where they show like sophisticated black people seemingly out of place in these like old paintings, like there'll be this one painting of George Washington, and behind him there's this like black figure with a round face, a pudgy kind of round face guy with the feather and the turban and all that stuff, and people assume because of the time period that this is a slave dressed this way. But in actuality, the actual character in there is not a slave at all. He represents like a teaching mentor figure from Europe in Washington's life. And there's several paintings from those time periods where these characters, you just assume that because this is the 1700s or whatever it was painted in, you just assume that this is a slave guy. This was his servant, and this was not the case, So the photo reference, the actual reference and clothing that I'm using for these comes from those kind of paintings and stuff, and they were. And the reason I use them is because of my, I think it's funny using an alien time period to what we know. So what we know, I'm Generation X, and I'm practicing Muslim, and I'm conservative, and I'm from Detroit. All right, so my tastes and stuff about what's cool has that flavor of like the 1970s and 80s and stuff when I grew up on it. I don't find the styles and stuff of today, of the 20 somethings and stuff of today, I don't find that look cool. And when it does look cool to me, it's usually retro, and by accident you're like trying to mimic styles that I thought were cool when I was a kid, you know. So what's cool to me, with the shades and the, the leather jacket and that look and the, the Superfly and that time period of what's cool, I don't want to do that when I'm drawing or depicting characters from an alien culture. So in this cartoon, this represents an alien culture. This is the previous black civilization. They don't know nothing that I know, and I don't know them. I can only speculate based on the what's in the record and the evidence and what they do and that kind of stuff and how they look in these paintings. And influence from like people like Jack Vance, who, when he would draw people as when he would depict people in his writing as sophisticated and high over civilized and stuff, he would go to like that type of attire styles where it's like over the top, foppish, dandy, goofy looking from our sensibility. But they thought they were the shit, with that look, So I thought it's funny. It's funny, but it also like shows them inside of their head as what they think is cool from an alien culture perspective that we have to it's forcing us to come out of ourselves. So if I put them if I have too many influences of what we use today, I don't want that. So one of them actually have using the spectacles on the thing, but it represents people of the past being more sophisticated than we give them credit for it now. Something like John Anthony West, before he passed, what he used to say a lot when he's like referencing what people of the past did compared to now and how we project modern ideologies and modern narratives on the people of the past who were actually much more sophisticated. They did a lot of stuff. Their sciences, they did things that they forgot stuff that we're just now catching up to and rediscovering in our sciences and stuff. They were the ones who already had done, plotted out the precession of the equinoxes, math and all that stuff. And we like rediscovered it. The same with the navigating the longitude and latitude lines and that stuff. They done all that stuff already. And we were like thinking we doing something, but modern Western civilization rediscovered those things. You have to play catch up for what the ancients had already we did that. Evidence of that all our stuff. And this disingenuous ideological nonsense that makes you say otherwise because you're trying to confine modern thought to a certain thing. So my cartoon represents an archetype of a time period in which the black peoples of the previous civilizations instructed the Europeans in their lore. And there's so many points that's worth exploring in there. I referenced Dr. Thomas Sewell's book. That was the book that I introduced him to me, and I know in a lot of ways he's problematic, and I agree with that 100%. As he got older, as he made the decision to join the conservatives as a mouthpiece for their rhetoric, I think his work took a dip. But There's also a lot of areas where he was not afraid to explore and go places, and that were full of insights, and even in areas where you wouldn't suspect. But if you have an honest eye for truth and you're looking for the facts, and you're not scared of them, you're not afraid to confront them, and like, what are the implications of this? What does this mean? Instead of having the penchant of like hiding it and let someone else deal with it. It doesn't fit the narrative I'm trying to press. I don't believe in that. I will confront it and see what you have, and where does this fit? How does it fit? What does it mean? So, one of Dr. Sewell's essays in that same book, he's talking about the Germans. He has a lot of his point of talking about the Germans in the way he's talking about them is to show that these were a solid people who were smart, who did all these things and stuff. And the fact that the Holocaust happened, he's like, it could have happened to anyone. The right circumstances could have happened that would turn anybody into the Third Reich and whatever came from that. So he's like, stop treating the Germans the way you're treating them, just with that taint on it. They don't have to be that way. They were a different people before, and it was an interesting article from that essay from that standpoint. What it showed, as a quick sketch, what he showed was from a certain time period, a group of colluding families of ancient Germans. They may not even call themselves that at the time, maybe. But a group of German families grabbed this piece of knowledge from somewhere. And the timing of this meant that the Moors were around. They grabbed a piece of knowledge and made the decision that no matter what, they would keep this piece of knowledge and teach it to their children and never let it go. That they might learn more from over the ages, over the generations. But no matter what, at bare minimum, they would hold on to this as part of their family lore. And then these groups of Germans split up and went all over the world, set up like little communes or cells or whatever you want to call it in different strategic places around the globe. So that no matter what happens, there will always be one group of this particular, the descendants of these original group of Germans who made this pact among each other. That no matter what, if something happens to you, you make your way here, or we will find your survivors and make sure we all have this same peace we're passing. We're going to have a minimum level of quality of life as a group. That's what the Germans did. This was interesting to me for a variety of reasons. This is cool as heck. Most notably was where they got that original curriculum from that they decided to build this family legacy around. The Moors gave them that. This was part of whatever the lessons, whatever, when they showed up in Europe to civilize these peoples. They gave them something for whatever reason, and it built these people up. Not everybody accepted it, the way they accepted it and stuff. Like there was another notable item that Sewell doesn't mention, but because he showed that, now my eye is open looking for like similar items that who else during that time period might have done the similar. The Dutch, during that same time period or a similar time period, had made the decision to be the masters of this particular industry. Making cheese or something. It was something that I forgot off the top of my head. It was something, but I know it was like something that they were gonna throw everything they had into this, and we're going to master this and be the best of this in the world. And they started wrapping themselves around this particular industry and got this thing to a high level because of that attention and using these interesting, suspicious science-based stuff around it. And the Moors were around. And then suddenly they abandoned that idea and went in a different direction. And the reason they went into a different direction was because the transatlantic slave trade had begun, and that unlimited super money had started to pour in. And they didn't have to do whatever they were about to do at that time. Now you know them as what's going on in those particular group of lands in Europe. Now they're like the financial super hub, because of all that money from there. The VOC, that particular trading company. As a quick aside, with the Dutch East India Trading Company, if you would invested a single dollar, they were paying out 20% interest to their shareholders for 200 years. A single dollar would have been $14 trillion compounded later, So nobody was investing only a dollar at the time. It was like the super company that birthed all super companies of we know today. This is, I'm going to reference this again in the future, so be ready. It's very important, the implications and what they did and what that means and what it means for us in the modern day, what it means for my people, all of that is very important. The money. Never underestimate the money, because it's the key to all of that, But pointing out what the Germans did with that aspect, what the Dutch were about to do following the Germans' lead is what that looked like. But the transatlantic slave trade changed all of that. It's a completely different direction when super money starts flowing in. Now it's a power. You can do whatever with it then. You don't have to actually do that, so they can do something different. But that's what this particular cartoon represents. It was originally a cover to a specific argument that you're welcome to follow. I'm linking to it in my I posted it, copied it in my blog, as I usually do. And you can recognize that it's an archetype of that particular time period. Multiple time periods that happened when black civilizations went to Europe, and civilized the light-skinned ethnic tribes there. And it happened a lot. It was not unusual. And the only reason it feels or seems unusual now is because we were brainwashed and indoctrinated to think otherwise, because the legacy families in power now don't want the competition. So they don't want you to know about those things. It's mean and it's selfish, it's greedy. And because it's greedy, it's evil. For love of money and all of that. That's the nature of it. Don't be afraid of following facts and truth where it leads. That's the stuff that sets us free. That's the stuff that's our strength. One particular group getting to enjoy the resources of the earth is not good for anybody. It's not even good for them, because they have to sell their souls in order to be in that place. And no good comes from that. So, thanks and peace.